Hi there, how are you? I recently got a question from a reader of my book about how to open a deli or a corner shop. And let me tell you, this is not an easy business. You're not going to become rich unless you own a bunch of these. And let me tell you how this works. Um, Usually, it really depends on the kind of block you're on. And I'm going to say block because um, the clientele you get varies from block to block. So, for example, if you're in a yuppie area, you're going to be selling products that are more like natural products, maybe fruit, maybe organic things, and those have a high profit margin. Whereas if you are in a bad area, most of the products you will sell are going to be very, this old kind of junk food, which have terrible, terrible product margins. You're going to be selling like cheap beer and malt liquor alcohol. And this is statistically this way. I'm not just making this up. This is statistics of like if you're in an affluent area, you're going to be selling one kind of product. If you're in an impoverished area, you're going to be selling other kinds of products. So you're going to be selling like more cigarettes, and from the cigarettes, it's mostly like it's so taxed now that it's mostly the government making money. You're going to be selling like lottery tickets, and lottery tickets are also brutal. Like I think, you make pennies on a dollar. So if you sell a lottery ticket for like $1, the store owner actually gets to keep like 5, 6, 7 cents, something like that. It's ridiculous. What you want is products which have 50 or greater percent profit margin. So like bottled water is a great example because usually you can sell it for $1 or more, but typically the cost for a store owner is about 20 cents. So you can see, I mean, it's good. So instead of selling a bottled water, right, then you make a 80 cents profit from that, versus selling it for the same dollar versus selling a lottery ticket, you'll only make 7 cents from that, or 5 cents, or 6 cents, right? So it really depends. Now, if you have that's just if you have a corner kind of store. If you have a deli, it's another thing. People expect low prices from delis, so there's not a whole lot of great profit also from the food itself, right? So it's kind of the clientele, and so the clientele makes the entire difference. If you're in a rich area, you're gonna have clientele that buys organic food or more like grocery things and stuff like that. Versus if you have clientele that can't afford a lot, they're usually gonna buy very low margin product. And so that's really the location. So location for this business matters, like really, literally block to block, right? Because you can be just a couple of blocks away and you'll get a totally different sort of clientele coming to your store. Now, the other thing is sometimes people wonder, should I, like how much money can I really make in this, right? And it's actually really hard. Like a lot of deli owners or mom and pop owners, they only survive really financially by either getting free labor from their friends and their family members, or very, very cheap or discounted labor, or themselves working for a very low salary. So, and also obviously if you're managing such a store, it's not even going to be the number of hours that you're going to be at the store. You also have to keep on buying inventory. You have to, sometimes you'll get it delivered, but sometimes you have to go and buy it from warehouses. Also, warehouses are pretty controlled. Like the supply to the warehouses from which you'll be buying things are pretty controlled. So those guys will sort of also squeeze you on the margins because you won't have a whole lot of choice of the warehouses from which you can buy your product to resell in your store. And of course, if you sell food, there's a lot of issues with perishables and things like that. It's another challenge. So that's really the challenge. It's a hard business. The cool thing is, like any business, you have freedom. I mean, you don't really have a boss, so that's cool. It's also you do end up working in very close quarters with people. You develop relationships with them. That's a good thing about this business, and you kind of get to be a part of the community in a way, right? You kind of get to be very immersed in the community. If you're the store, people know you, people come to you, and they trust you, things like that. So that's the nice things about it. A lot of people find it to be like a sexy business, like a dream to open their own deli or sandwich shop, but it's a hard one. Another consideration that you should think about is buying a space versus leasing it. Uh, Sometimes it's an easy decision because like you can't always buy one, right? And you don't know if you're going to want to do it long term. So leasing is easiest. Long term, you might be better off buying the property. Also, before you open one, you should consult with an attorney or somebody who may be a small business accountant. Figure out what kind of business entity you should open, like an S Corp, C Corp, LLC, something else. So they can advise you with that, and then you can register that with the city and state, actually with the state. And then for licensing and permits, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to reach out to your, again, the state, city level, and county level, and see what they require. There's a lot of like health and safety inspections, depending on your area. Like like if you're in New York versus if you're in a small town. In New York, you'll have a tremendous number of like permits and licenses you'll need, and all kinds of inspections to pass. Whereas in a small area, you won't have nearly as many. But those are expenses, right? Another thing to consider is if you're living in a area in which you'll have a lot of expenses, like your rent will be expensive, other things will be expensive, right? But there is a certain range of products, like Dorito chips or something like that they print the price right on the bag. So you're forced to sell that bag for whatever price they print, which means that if you're in a small town and your expenses are low, then you can make a lot of money from this bag, like a big profit margin. But if you're in a place where you have a lot of expenses, then you're not making nearly as much money. Maybe selling it for a loss. So there's all kinds of these types of products as well. That's a whole another sub area of discussion here. But really, it's also to open this kind of a store, you're going to want to figure out how to come up with the money. You're going to have to figure out all the expenses, how much money you'll need to raise, things like that. And I talk about this in so many of my previous videos that I'm not going to go into too much detail. But you essentially want to create like a cash flow balance sheet, like cash flow statement, which is going to list all your sort of cash flows, like expenses, and then your revenues, and so you'll kind of get a sense of the financials for your business, and that's going to give you a sense of how much money you'll need to raise, which really actually brings me to a really important point. Some people they think they're just going to open a deli or a store from a completely new location. But what's easy to do sometimes, or not easy but less difficult, is you can buy out an existing deli or a small shop owner, right? Corner store owner, and everything's already remodeled for you. They already have all the inventory. They'll tell you exactly where to get the inventory. They have clientele that's going to be coming into your store, so you're not starting from zero. Things like that. And there's some turnover. There's usually some turnover of these kinds of stores where people sort of want to quit the business and get out of it, because it's a hard business to do long term. That's why a lot of people, they try it for a year or two or three, and then they kind of maybe say, hey, maybe I want to do something else. So then they kind of maybe look to sell the business. So it's actually very viable to take over an existing business. Just want to make sure you don't take over their existing debt or things like that. So you certainly want to have a lawyer look at the contract that you're going to be signing and things like that. But once it's sort of a clean transfer, it will make the transition for you much smoother, and you won't be starting from absolute zero. Meaning that your cost will also be a lot smaller to start, right? Because no remodeling, the employees are there, or maybe you'll be the employee and whoever is in your family or something like that. So anyway, that's essentially the things to consider when starting a deli, or like a local deli, or like a local corner store, or a sandwich shop, something like that. Those are really the main considerations.